What's up guys, my name is Lex Veldhuis and welcome to another episode of Lex Reflect. Today we're gonna dive into 3 huge pots from the big game. The biggest one is gonna be over $200,000. Now I picked these episodes because they're all versus the American crew. 2 of the hands are versus Scott Seaver, 1 is versus Justin Bonomo. Let's just dive straight into the action and look at the hands. Alright, so I open Ace Queen. It's definitely one of the better hands that I would open back then. We see Negreanu Russo getting out the way.
So since I was asleep, I don't know who's steaming or who's on a rhythm.
Lex is steaming.
You're steaming?
False.
Okay.
I never steam. I get mad.
Scott is steaming.
I don't steam.
Scott just plays like he's steaming.
Don't you mean steam rolling?
Alright, and immediately we see Scott Seaver making it $5,000 with the 8-3 suited. This is way out of line. Even versus an aggressive player that's going to have a lot of bad opens, you really want to have a hand with some blocker effects. A hand like King 5 suited would already be so much better in that situation. You really want to block some strong hands that I open because even players like me get strong hands. Apart from that, 8-3 doesn't have any playability. It plays like dog shit post flop. It never makes a good pair. It never makes a really strong flush. So Scott's getting way out of line and he's really taking a more sort of personal attack here, which is what happened a lot back then. I would do it all the time. Which is actually something we're going to see in the next hand as well. So maybe I shouldn't preach too much about it. I just realized that while talking.
You got to wonder about how self-aware Scott Seaver is. Daniel mentions he's playing like he's steaming, then he re-raises with 8 high.
I definitely want to record these hands sort of like as I see them. A lot of memories come up, and I felt like if I decide how I'm going to record and what I want to say, it just doesn't work really for me.
Veldhuis calls.
All right, so we're going to make the call with ace queen off. I think it's absolutely standard. I think if I make a 4-bet, so re-raise, then I would actually turn into bluff. We'll never get action from worse.
6 king ace.
And it's also nice for me because I do play a lot of pots to the flop that I actually get a spot where I just have easy check calls, which is what happens here.
Lex is going to continue to let Scott steam bet.
Scott fires 8,000.
So Scott bets about 40% of the pots. Absolutely fine, also from today's standards. You can even bet smaller if you want.
And there it is.
Just because you want to bet that ace high board so often.
He lets Scott keep repping a big hand and he plays it safe.
Wow.
This is a good card for Lex in more ways than one. It improves his hand and gives Scott even more reason to try to rep one himself.
Lex is checked over to Seaver.
And the funny thing is that now it's actually my aggressive image that's making me money in a pot where I'm calling. Because Scott's going to assume that my range is so wide that I have like all kinds of jack 10 offsuits, that I have the lowest flush draws, and I might even have a hand like queen 6 suited that I'm going to call the flop with. Scott's going to fire another barrel at it. Obviously I have an easy call. And we're already at a pot that's almost worth $70,000. So I thought it was really interesting to showcase how an aggressive image can also make you more money when you're the passive person in the pot.
Lex checks.
How much do you have?
Oh man, this could get brutal for Seaver if he's thinking about making a play.
Can you break down the yellows? Just because they're random.
This is definitely something that used to annoy me a bit with Scott Seaver. He would always have to know precisely, even though the chips are stacked very normal. You know, 22,000, 19,000 in yellows. Who gives a shit, you know? But fair play to Scott. He's an amazing player.
Check's good.
Try real good for Lex.
Don't really know where the fuck came from because he checked back, so...
It's ironic that Scott wasn't steaming this hand, but he probably will be now.
Lex wins a pot of nearly 68 grr.
Alright, so that's the end to the first hand. We're going to dive straight into the next hand. It's also a pot versus Scott Seaver, and here we're going to see more relentless aggression from us too. Okay, so 5-9 suited. We're back to debatable opens.
Yeah, and you're like, no, and you feel like you have a chance to salvage it right there.
Yeah,
like,
you're like, wait.
Oh yeah, it's in the past and it's all on DVD. Yeah,
It's all DVD, TiVo.
Vanessa Russo makes a good 3-bet. It's a bit small for how deep this cash game plays. She's not going to get rid of a whole lot of my hands. And this is where we go into the shadow realm.
9-5 is the hand Scott played twice in a row against Daniel this week and won it both times. Pocket fours must look pretty juicy to Scott, looking over at Vanessa's deep stack.
This is a thing that we used to see a lot back in the day. I remember actually one of my biggest double ups in a $40,000 tournament that I played was because Sean Deep 6-bet pocket fours against my ace king all in. And here you see another example where when people decided to be aggressive, they would just pick hands that they would normally play, felt like it was a good situation or one of the spots, and then just play the hand and play it aggressively and go for raises. And you kind of see it with pocket fours here as well, right? Which is a big problem because Vanessa Russo, when she does want to bluff, she's going to have some ace-6 of hearts, but that also means that, you know, she wants to have ace 4 of spades. She wants to have ace 4 of hearts, maybe king 4 spades or hearts. So there's all these kind of hands that your opponent can't have that are weak, and you just don't block anything. You're literally just making high cards available when you have pocket fours. There's always a better chance to wait for something like a hand here, like ace 10 suited, that blocks a shitload of really good hands. Or even ace queen offsuit is a really good option here, because you don't really want to call because the hand's too weak, but you don't really want to fold because it has really strong blocking effects in a really aggressive game. So Scott picks fours, definitely not a fan, but I probably have to bite down because I go the extra step and beyond.
Lex is reaching for chips with his 9-5 suited.
And make the worst 4
And he
bets.
5 bets.
5 bets, actually.
And another raise.
This is the 5 bets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so I make the worst 5 bet known in history. 9-5 doesn't block anything. I even block Scott's ace 5 bluffs, ace 9 suited bluffs, which are actually pretty good cards to have back then.
Raise pot.
Seaver pots it all in. And I have to fold.
Good fold.
Oh, Scott Seaver, you're crazy.
Shows a 4. Makes you want to punch somebody, but fair play again.
What is this guy doing?
It's always good. It's very smart of
So
him to show
weird.
4.
What he's doing is dominating the table in pre-flop wins.
I'll say this one goes to 11. Scott's got more than double the amount of pre-flop wins than Daniel, who ranks second, and 11 times the amount of Todd Brunson.
Look at me.
Scott Seaver eyes.
That seems to happen on Lex on TV like every time. It's weird.
Maybe I should just stop making moves.
Finally, some honest analysis.
Right, that's the best thing out of this entire episode. So, absolutely abysmal hand selection, and this is definitely not something that came into play back then, because if you look at Scott Seaver, he was one of the best players. I mean, he's still one of the best cash game players in the world. He was one of the best cash game players back then, and he picks a hand like pocket fours to go to war with. So you can already tell that it's not a concept that was very well known back then. So if I look in the spirit of the time, I actually think that we both played the hand great in that sense. Obviously, I'm very critical of myself looking back, but if I look at 9-5, my read was correct, so to say, because I know that Scott's gonna attack us opening. You know, with the Vanessa 3-bet, he's going to attack that. So my read on that situation was correct, and his read on me was correct, and he sniffed that one out. So I do think in a way that we both played some pretty solid street poker, but I do also want to give you guys some information about why those hands are bad, because a lot of times I'll hear people talk about hands in a vacuum, say like, oh, he didn't have anything, so I'm just going to go all in. But, you know, the cards that you have actually matter a lot. There's a lot of situations where you can go for a pre-flop play, so at least make sure that you have some useful cards with some useful effects when you do. All right, so now we're going to jump into the biggest part of this episode, which is against Scott Seaver's compadre, Justin Bonomo. All right, so immediately we get a loose cannon situation here. We have Russ Harlow opening with the Queen Jack. I'm on the button here, and this is a spot I'm going to want to take a lot. At first, the loose cannon is going to be too tight, and usually near the end of the session, if they're not up, they're going to be too loose. Remember, just a little refresher for you guys, the loose cannon got $100,000 to play with, and they had to make a profit to bring that money home. On top of that, they were competing for a nice live tournament package if they were the biggest winner of the season. So at first, they always wanted to feel out the table. They were incentivized to play a bit tight, and then as their money went down, they couldn't wait for good hands anymore, and they had to make a lot of action. Therefore, I 3-bet with 10-6 suited. This is definitely just to isolate the loose cannon and position myself well against him. Justin Bonomo cold calls. Is definitely not advisable to cold call out of position. But again, I completely agree with Justin's assessment of the situation. He also wants a loose cannon in, and my range is so weak that I actually think that you can play ace-jack as a call here. At least I got to see the flop.
I'm trying to take his money, not yours.
Yeah.
Not sure that's all that comforting to Russ at the moment.
That's true.
So action back on Russ.
You might be right, actually. All right, Russ gets out with his bad hand, which is good. You want to check in the dark or anything?
Nope.
Nope.
Now he's left out of position to the one guy he doesn't want to play with.
All right, so fantastic board for me, right? We have a straight flush gut shot draw.
Lex is behind and he's not even the favorite, but he is the only one drawing to the nuts.
So Justin checks, and here we definitely want to bet. I bet about 70% of the pot, which I really like.
Justin's got the nut flush draw and one overcard to the board.
Still needs to see the chips. I mean, it's a high-6 cash game, I don't mind.
Plus, he's ahead right now.
And Justin decides to check raise here. Justin has the nut draw. Now,
Bonomo raises to 18 grand.
this is where things get interesting, because what I'm thinking about here is that Justin cold calls out of position. So the hands that I can scrap from that range are aces, kings, and queens. Like, he's just never going to do that, regardless of the loose cannon, because what you really want when you flat call with those hands there is for the original opener to do something crazy. Loose cannons aren't going to do anything crazy, so flatting overpairs doesn't make sense there. So I know that I'm not against an overpair range, but I have all the overpairs because I was a re-raiser pre-flop, right? So this is a really important part of constructing my shoving range, or a range that I can pressure with, right? Like, I want to have the ability to represent a really strong hand if I were to decide to go all in. What's really a disaster with my hand is if I get it in, if I play versus a dominating draw. So let's say king nine of spades, king jack of spades, ace high spades, queen x of spades would obviously be the biggest disaster, because I would be down to 4 outs just for the straight and straight flush draw. I think that everything together, that I can have a really solid shoving range, and I'm actually not up against that many nuts. Sure, he can have pocket eights, pocket sevens, but if that's worst case, then I still have a ton of outs. If they have a higher flush draw, the only flush draw that can really call in is the ace high flush draw. Remember, I have a little over 100,000 behind. I think he's going to struggle to call with a hand like jack nine of spades sometimes, especially for this amount, and playing for these stakes as well. People are definitely sort of looser, more correct in calling withdrawals like that nowadays. But back then, I don't really think that we would have seen a hand like jack nine suited, or let's say king nine suited, king jack suited, especially when they don't have a gut shot there, go all in very happily. I don't think that the playability of my hand is going to be great, and I really thought I could get some weaker hands out. Also, what was being done a lot back then is people would raise the flop, let's say with a queen jack suited that they call pre-flop, and people would be raise folding those hands a little bit more, because then they have enough info, because then all of a sudden, when I do go all in, they're up against a really strong range. So for all of those reasons, and I remember all of this went through my head, I decide to go all in. I'm all in. Booyakasha.
All in.
And I think that this reaction by Justin Bonomo really says a lot about what would have happened if he had a king high flush draw. He's super uncomfortable with the ace high flush draw. He really feels like, ugh, my hands are tight. Ugh, you know, you can see the agony about this situation. And I think that says a lot about what he would have done with lower flush draws that still would have dominated me. So I think I have a massive amount of fold equity. I think I would have gotten a lot of hands out. You know, I think that obviously the biggest concern would be king, queen, or ace, queen of spades. But there's a plethora of other hands he can have. He can also just make a check raise with random cards that he wanted to keep the loose cannon in with. There could be some ace king in there with a spade that he check raises the flop with, and I get rid of a lot of that. Remember that I'm a very aggressive player, especially back then I was quite a lunatic, so people are going to try and take pots away from me on flops.
Lex's line actually looks pretty strong here.
Justin, uncomfortable, but does realize that he can't go anywhere because he dominates so many flush draws.
If you add in Lex's reputation for being a maniac, Justin might even think he could be ahead.
I think that the time banking...
I call. I have a flush draw. Do you want to run it a few times?
Oh.
Bonomo calls.
Ooh, that hurts. I really, really think that if you look at the time that Justin takes the call, that a lot of my theory about how I play versus other flush draws is proven, which makes me feel actually pretty good about the hand. Funny enough, if you look at one of the worst case scenarios, I still have 35% chance. That's the same as ace king versus kings, mind you. So I still have 35% chance. So I think my hand plays is a great semi-bluff. Don't think the turn plays great. Think I can make a dominating flush draws fold, can make some pairs fold. So really just run into it here. It's no good, right?
No, it's not good.
Wow.
It's up to you how many times you want to run it. The more the better for me.
Nut flush draw versus gut shot, straight flush draw, and pair draw. Sick.
That's not
Got
good.
some huge pots here.
Once. All right, and this is an interesting decision because this is not something that is just purely based on gambling, because a lot of people, when they see that, think, oh, Lex is a lunatic, he wants to go once. You can see it on Justin's face as well. But what I really feel like is that in those days, especially because I was so erratic and I was playing high stakes a lot and I was having these insane bankroll swings because I definitely wasn't rolled for this game and I played 100% on myself. So I knew this money meant a lot to me, but when Justin says to me, the more times we can run it, the better, the first thing that pops in my head is like, I will care less if we run it once and I lose. So I feel like the downside of running it once is less for me, and I can really rattle him or put him on some like early uncomfortability. I'm definitely not going to say tilt because Justin is a pro, but I can put him on some early uncomfortability by running it once. You can tell by Justin's face here that he's also surprised at my answer here, but that's exactly what I was concocting. Of course, now you have to win the hand, but I still feel like this is an important thing, right? If losing the pot will hurt you less than the other player, then I definitely think that running it once can be a very good thing to do.
So
That or ace queen of spades, obviously.
Well, it's better than ace nine of spades, I guess, but...
Lex thought he wanted to see any spade. Now it's actually just one. The 9 of spades will still make him a straight flush.
The turn. The ace of diamonds.
That's not very good. I remember hating that card so much. It felt so unfair. He's already ahead. Can we do it twice? Can I bite running it 2 times now? How much would that cost me?
Well, I mean, yeah. We can still do the river twice if you want.
No.
Psych!
I really wanted Max Payne.
Did you like offer that just so you could say no when I said yes?
No, I
Is
just...
that the whole setup?
No, I meant, can I bite it? We do the whole thing again or something.
Okay.
Something like that now. Doing the river twice is silly. It's just silly. I want to just win it once. That's going to be epic, but... What am I, like 9%?
Way better than that. 11%.
Bang.
Now you're 0%.
All right, and we miss it, but I really think that if you look at the facial tells, if you look at the reaction during that engagement, I think that there's something to learn there in live poker as well. I think oftentimes people don't realize what the extra implications could be of running a hand twice or 3 times or just once. And I think a lot of times people immediately, you see it on TV, oh, people run it 3 times, let's run it 3 times. But sometimes you're in a game and it really doesn't make sense. Or what if you play against a good player, but they only have a certain amount of money or they have a stop loss and you want to have that player out of the game? Then running it 3 times actually decreases their variance because there's a bigger chance they get a part back from the pot, so you only want to run it once. Of course, I made a lot of stupid bankroll decisions at that time, but when I get to that stage and I'm at the table, I thought this was a great decision to run it once. This is actually one of the hands that I think that I played really well, that I had a really sound reasoning for, and that my hand selection in doing so was also great. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed playing against Justin Bonomo, Scott Seaver. They always bring the action. They're class acts at the table. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. So please drop a comment down below if you want to see something special, if you want to hear me talk about something, if you have any questions about the situation. Obviously, also, if you enjoy these videos that are coming out, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much. You guys want to play 4-8 instead of?
No, straddle's good.
Okay.
What the hell?
But then no straddles, I mean. So no straddling?
Straddle's more fun.
That's what you think.